Do you know what time it is? It's time for a controversial episode of What's the Deal With. Maybe you've got a child at home and you've seen some of the homework they bring home and you're thinking to yourself, what's the deal with Common Core math? Let me help. As a parent, I can understand other parents' frustrations when they're asking themselves, what's the deal with Common Core math, right? It seems like they've made math really complicated for no good reason. Am I right? Can I get an amen? I want to present to you some ideas on Common Core math and dispel some myths as to what they're really trying to do to kids. Now, a few disclaimers before we get started. I'm going to attempt to leave politics out of it, although they will come in just for a second as I talk about a little bit of the history and some of the pushback that I've heard from other parents of why they don't like Common Core math. I also am only going to be focusing on Common Core mathematics. So let's leave Common Core other subjects out of the conversation for the moment. I will tell you that Common Core math really came on the scene starting in 2009. When Common Core came on the scene, there were a few major problems that states were looking to try and fix. One of the biggest problems that they found was that let's take a scenario of you are currently living in the state of Michigan, and Michigan doesn't teach fractions until 4th grade. You have a 3rd grader though. So your 3rd grader goes to school, they're loving life, everything is great, and then someone in your family gets a new job and it's time to move. And now you move to Illinois, not that far away, right? And so in Illinois, their state has decided that fractions are taught in 3rd grade. Are you seeing the problem here? So your child, who did a very successful year in 3rd grade in Michigan, now moves to Illinois and now is a 4th grader, but now doesn't understand fractions. Not because they had a bad teacher, not because they didn't understand math, but because in Michigan, they literally didn't teach fractions until 4th grade, which isn't a problem as long as you stay in Michigan. But now you've moved to Illinois and all the other kids have gotten fractions in 3rd grade. Now your child is behind. This was a huge problem that the states realized that they needed to try and fix with Common Core math. This happens a lot, right? We are a country with a bunch of states, and so people move fluidly between them. Another issue that was found was that students were really learning procedural mathematics. What do I mean by procedural mathematics? Well, let me give you an example for a moment. Here's what I mean by procedural mathematics. I could go on the streets in New York and give this problem to, let's say 100 people. And I can promise you that there would be several people that didn't understand this problem. Why don't they understand it? And I'm assuming I didn't allow them to use a calculator. Because part of the problem is when I've got so many zeros and I am borrowing, right? I'm going to use the non-Common Core language. I'm borrowing. What happens is I end up having to borrow and borrow and borrow and borrow, and it gets confusing, right? Is this a 10? Is it a 9? I can't remember what happened. Did I carry a 1? Did I take from the 1? Okay, this is a very procedural approach to subtraction. Now you might be thinking, yeah, but Marsha, I learned that way and it worked. Okay, my question for you is, if your mom's life depended on the fact that you get this right, can you, with 100% certainty, tell me that you can get this question right? Now, you've also had a lot more experience practicing this math and this subtraction over years of time, right? Students aren't going to have that right away. So what happened was when, my generation, maybe if you're a little bit older and you didn't get Common Core as a child, your generation does this sort of problem. We're really going through the procedures. I start in the ones column. Can I take 8 from 0? Okay, what do I need to do? Borrow a 1 from my neighbor. That sort of language, right? It's all very algorithmic or very procedural. Common Core says, let's get students away from this and teach what's behind the procedure, what's behind the algorithm. Let me give you an example of actually where you do Common Core math in your own life and you don't even realize it. If you've ever had a cashier job, and I'm talking about old school, I know that now we have cashiers that will tell you exactly how much change you need, right? And so then you just hand them back that change. But back in the day, we didn't have cash registers that told us exactly how much to give you back. And so what people would do, and you remember this if you've ever used cash years ago, people would count the change back to you. If you pay, if you owe $19.28 and you paid with a $20 bill, they would say, here's 2 pennies to make 30 cents, here's 20 cents to make 50 cents, and here's 50 cents to make your change, right? This is an example of the count up strategy in subtraction. So we actually teach students how to start with the subtrahend, or that number you're taking away, and count up until we get to the minuend. If you're interested in a subtraction strategies video, I actually have one on my channel, so feel free to look at my videos and see some more in-depth learning on that. So the problem with teaching children algorithms to start is that they don't understand the math behind the algorithm. And on top of that, what happens if they mess up one little thing in the algorithm? For instance, you might remember the division algorithm, right? Could you do this problem easily? Would you have to think about, okay, well, what do I have to do first? Well, okay, I think I need to move the decimal. Which decimal am I moving? Am I going left or right? If those are questions that you would have for this sort of a problem, then that means that maybe there's some holes in the algorithm that you've memorized. So instead of, again, just teaching students to follow simple procedures of step 1, move the decimal on the inside, we come up with all of these funny terms. Instead of teaching them very procedurally, we're teaching them to think deeply. When I say that we're teaching them to think deeply, what I mean is we're used to being taught a one-dimensional approach to math. And that is, I'm the teacher, I tell you what to do, and you replicate it. That's great, but is that real-world math? Recently, we bought a home and we decided to remodel it. And we had to figure out the math to measure the baseboards and then cut them and cut the angles so that they fit together. I can tell you right now that even watching a video of somebody else doing it did not necessarily help me in that moment, because I had to think critically as to what was the math and what were the angles that needed to fit together. In real life, math is not procedural. It's very in-depth. It's problem solving, right? We're trying to figure out how much carpet do we need for the room, and yet we have to think about door jambs that need carpet. There's all kinds of really in-depth problem solving that happens in math in the real world. And that's not even considering actual jobs that are using math for their industries. One-dimensional math is a way of the past. We need to get our students thinking more deeply in a multidimensional mathematics approach. Now, there are these things in Common Core Math called the Standards of Mathematical Practices. There are 8 of them. Again, I have a video just on those as well. Those will really show you how we're asking students to do things like build a model to match a situation. We're asking them to persist in problem solving. We're asking them to use repeated reasoning and figure out patterns. Do you understand that if a number ends in an even number, that it's divisible by 2? You're using a mathematical practice of repeated reasoning. So these are all things that we want students. We've realized that students who are good at math, by the way, there's no such thing as being born good at math. The students that are good at math or seem good at math are students that are figuring out these mathematical practices on their own. Why not unlock the magic for all of our students? That's what Common Core is really speaking to, is helping students to unlock these strategies and not they have to figure it out or maybe never figure them out years later. The other beauty of Common Core Math is we're really focusing on mental math strategies. If I gave you a subtraction problem, are you going to put it in your head right now? You know what I'm talking about? 10,000 minus 399, and you're like, 10,000, hold on, minus 399. Okay, here we go, I'm going to borrow. You're closing your eyes, you got your pencil in the air. Okay, you laugh because that's what we do. There's way easier strategies to do it mentally. Part of the reason that people started taking aim at Common Core Math was when President Obama was in office and he put some money towards the Common Core Standards Initiative. When he put this money towards it, it became political. And unfortunately, people on the opposite side of the aisle decided that this was potentially a political agenda to push forward these ideas, and maybe they're teaching our students weird things. Common Core got a bad rap. In all reality, Common Core Math is really normal things that, again, most people already do in their head. So it's not political. No one's trying to teach your child weird math things. That's not what Common Core mathematics is all about. This makes people like me really sad because math isn't political. I want my own children to have good problem-solving strategies. This is like a skill of life. So Common Core is really teaching our kids how to think deeply and how to problem solve, especially when it comes to mathematics. Let me give you some encouragement if you're a parent out there and you're pulling your hair out, because listen, I totally get it. First of all, it's not that you can't get it. You have to keep an open mind though, and you have to see what they're really trying to teach your child. If they're trying to teach them additional subtraction strategies and you're reverting back to the algorithm, you are sort of undoing what we're doing in the classroom. It would be helpful if we could be a team and get on board to both of those together. Reflect on, do you want your students to be good problem solvers? We need to be setting them up and equipping them to not just memorize a list of things that don't make any sense to solve a problem, but instead to actually have them reflect on, what does the place value really mean? Mental strategies are something we use every day. Help your child to embrace that, and I hope that this video helps you and you now have a better understanding of what's the deal with Common Core mathematics. Feel free to check out my YouTube channel for other videos about Common Core mathematics strategies.